You don't belong here. The words didn't need volume, didn't need force, didn't need anything extra. They slipped from Victoria Davenport's mouth like a tea invitation, soft but sharp as polished steel. And when they landed on the marble floor of the Zenith Club, they sliced the room in two, those who belonged and everyone else. Evelyn Reed stood right on that dividing line, and no one had to tell her. She knew from the tone of the woman at the reception. She knew from the way the hostess avoided her gaze. She knew from how the room paused. Chewing stopped, keyboards fell silent, heads turned slowly, as if waiting to witness someone being expelled. She said nothing. She just held her old leather notebook tighter in her left hand, its corners worn down, its pages yellowed like memories shelved in a library. The Zenith Club was no waiting lounge. It was a runway for modern American privilege. Italian leather seating, Persian rugs vacuumed hourly, ambient music mixed in a Berlin studio. The air had no scent, except the signature fragrance exclusive to its elite members. Every detail whispered, "You don't get here by accident." Evelyn hadn't arrived by accident, but silence had already condemned her before anyone even checked her pass. Victoria Davenport, Director of Customer Experience at Ascendia Air, stepped closer. A white woman in her 50s, her face stretched as taut as a brand strategy, flawless, calculated. She smiled. "Ma'am, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. This area is for Zenith Club members only." The word members was emphasized like a password not meant for public use. Evelyn held up her phone. Ascendia Air, first class. Zenith Access, confirmed. Victoria glanced for a second, then turned to the front desk agent. "Tickets can be bought," she said, just loud enough for everyone to hear, "but class cannot." No one objected. A man in a tailored suit smirked from a corner. A woman pulled out one side of her Beats headphones. A young guy looked down at Evelyn's flats, as if spotting a flaw in bulletproof glass. The air seemed to shrink around her like skin under a sun lamp. She wasn't afraid, but she understood now. Every breath in this place came at a cost, and hers was doubled. She wore a simple gray cashmere dress, no pattern, no logo. A handmade leather crossbody bag, brandless. Worn Todd's flats with a left strap slightly frayed. Perfect for a productive workday. But in this room, they became silent accusations. "I'll have to ask you to move to the security support office for verification," Victoria said. That word, verification, felt like a sentence handed down with no trial. Two security officers, one white, one Latino, walked up like they'd been standing by this whole time. They didn't touch Evelyn. They just stood on either side of her, like a pair of parentheses closing around a story everyone thought they already understood. Evelyn nodded. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She walked, steady and composed, as if counting the beats to a symphony that hadn't reached its crescendo. As she passed the tall mirror near the exit, Evelyn tilted her head slightly. Reflected, a small black woman walking between two men, escorted out of a space where no one had yelled, but every stare had already done the job. Behind her, the Zenith Club returned to its carefully curated silence. But at the edge of the mirror, a faint patch of breath lingered, proof she had been there, and that they had judged wrong. The door closed behind her. There was no click, but it didn't need one. This space was never designed for people to leave the same way they entered. The adjudication office. The name sounded like a joke, crafted by someone who never had to sit in the chair. White walls, steel table, hard plastic chairs. A one-way mirror covers the entire right side of the room. Nothing unnecessary, not a single warm detail. Just the sterile coldness of a procedure designed to strip humans of human rights. Evelyn sat without waiting for permission. No legs crossed, no leaning back. She sat like the second hand of a clock frozen between ticks, still, yet far from passive. The door opened. A young man entered. White, probably early 30s, dressed like the default template for middle management trying too hard. Navy suit, wool-wrapped red tie, slicked back gelled hair, and a look in his eyes that said he'd stared at himself in the mirror too long without learning a thing. "Mark," he said, as if his name were a polite command. He didn't offer a handshake. He sat down across from her and opened his laptop. The glow of the screen lit up his jawline, casting his face in artificial light Evelyn wouldn't waste electricity on. "Ms. Evelyn Reed," he began, voice deliberately neutral. "We need to verify some information regarding your presence at the Zenith Club." Evelyn didn't respond. She didn't move. Her silence acted as interference shielding, a bandwidth Mark had never been trained to navigate. "The ticket you used, who purchased it?" "My company." He typed a few keys. "First class." She didn't answer. She tilted her head slightly. "No confirmación. No denied." But in that silence lay a velvet-wrapped exclamation mark. "Are you traveling for business?" "I observe." Mark frowned. He didn't like ambiguity. He liked spreadsheets, checkboxes, and formulas. Evelyn was an equation with no known variable. He shifted tactics, eyes dropping. "Your dress." He looked up again. "Do you believe it fits the first-class passenger dress code?" She paused, then placed her hands on the table, fingers interlaced. "Where is that standard defined? May I see the official document?" Mark stalled. His lips moved like typing a sentence his brain hadn't approved. Then he pivoted, pretending he'd never been lost. "We'll need to inspect your personal device." Evelyn calmly pulled out a gray, logo-less tablet and placed it gently on the table, like a train ticket for those fluent in future languages. Mark reached for it. "No." Her voice didn't rise, but stopped the room. "This device is encrypted, protected under the Federal Trade Secrets Act. Title 18, Section 1832. Accessing it without a court order is a felony." "Do you have that order, Mark?" The air turned dense, as if packed into a pressurized capsule about to burst. Mark's expression twitched, not out of fear, but because this situation had left the language he understood. Behind the glass, Victoria was still standing. Her heels remained still, but her fingers clenched tight enough to drain them of color. The woman who had said, "You don't belong here," now stared at something she couldn't name, but recognized as a threat. Through her headset, she said, "That's enough. Cancel her ticket. Reason, disruption of security procedures. Remove her from the premises immediately." Two men in black uniforms appeared at the door. Mark looked at them, then back at Evelyn. "I'm afraid." "Before you proceed," Evelyn interrupted, eyes lifting toward the corner-mounted camera, recording their every breath. Her voice was steady, each word like tapping steel. "I suggest you contact your CEO, Mr. Jonathan Sterling. Tell him that Dr. Evelyn Reed has just activated the Omega Protocol." No one in the room knew what Omega Protocol meant. No one dared treat it as a joke. The two security guards froze. Mark turned pale. Behind the mirror, Victoria remained still for a beat, then slowly reached for her phone. The call connected. No one in the room heard the voice on the other end. But everyone saw Victoria, the woman who once smiled, thinking she held the power, drained of all color, as if someone had just deleted her from the system. The call ended in silence. "No shouting. No apology." Just a pause, heavy as steel, for the words, "I understand, sir." Victoria set the phone down on the table. She didn't place it. She dropped it like it had become a contaminated object. She turned toward the one-way mirror, no longer carrying the posture of someone in control. She looked at Evelyn as if trying to recalculate everything. Age, skin tone, worn shoes, brown leather notebook. Every detail she had once dismissed, now registered as data she couldn't decode. The door burst open. The airport's executive director entered, nearly colliding with the air, thick like used engine oil. Balding, out of breath, his tie twisted like a noose, strangling his own authority. He didn't look at Mark. He didn't look at Victoria. He only looked at Evelyn. "Dr. Reed," he said, voice cracking like thawing ice. "I apologize. We were wrong. I need to know. What would you like us to do next?" No one said a word, not even Mark, who seemed to have forgotten how to type. The two security guards took a step back, eyes pleading. Evelyn stood. No one stopped her. No one invited her. No one reached for the chair. Her movement was a tectonic shift, and everything else was waiting for the aftershock. The Zenith Club, 23 minutes later. She returned. No one spoke. No more smug glances. Only eyes too afraid to meet hers, but unable to look away. The same people who had watched her escorted out like a criminal were now seated like defendants summoned to a trial they didn't know they were part of. Victoria stood stiff as a column, but a column already cracked. Mark stood beside her, shoulders tight, eyes glued to the marble floor. No one was part of the system anymore. They were remnants of it. Evelyn didn't take the stage. She didn't need artificial height to speak. She stood in the center of the room like someone redrawing a map, slowly, without paper, without pen, only through presence. The lounge's large screen lit up. CEO Jonathan Sterling appeared, dialing in from New York. No suit, no tie. Seated, head slightly bowed, like a student called on to read aloud his own mistake in a classroom on ethics. There was no trace of luxury airline CEO. Only a man who had just lost his company's soul to a test he never knew he was taking. Evelyn didn't look at the screen. She looked at the room. I won't repeat what just happened. Her voice was low, steady, like reading a verdict that needed no bold print. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here to see if anyone in this room is even qualified to offer one. No one moved. She turned to Victoria. Do you know who I am now? Victoria nodded, slowly like someone swallowing salt water. Good, Evelyn replied, then turned to Sterling. Do you understand the current condition of Ascendia Air? He nodded. Good. Evelyn took a breath. Not deep, just enough to dam the quiet anger in her chest. I don't want a private meeting. I don't want a handwritten explanation. I don't want an internal memo. I want everyone here. Now, in this space where it all happened, a quiet sigh escaped from the corner of the room. An elderly woman, dressed in yoga gear worth several $1,000s, hid behind her iced matcha. The young concierge, the one who had avoided Evelyn's gaze that morning, now stood by the door, silent, like someone awaiting cross-examination. Evelyn said no more. She took a step back. I'll return in 10 minutes. When I come back, I expect Victoria, Mark, Mr. Sterling, and the entire crew of Flight A142 to be present. Because I don't just want to know why I was removed. I want to know why every single one of you stayed silent when it happened. She turned, walked away. No glance over her shoulder. No parting look. But each step she took echoed in their heads like a blow against a mirror, forcing every single person in the room to look at their own reflection. 10 minutes later, no one had left the Zenith Club. No one dared. No one was sure they wouldn't be the next to be called out. Evelyn returned. She didn't need a list. She didn't need notes. All she needed were the eyes that had once turned away. Victoria Davenport stood upright, but she was no longer leading any customer experience. Her makeup was no longer flawless, just the residue of someone who had lost a privilege she believed she was born with. Mark stood silently, hands clasped, as if trying to hide his own existence. The screen behind the bar lit up. Jonathan Sterling, CEO of Ascendia Air, was present. This time, not dialing in from an office. He was here, in a conference room upstairs, linked directly to the lounge's system. Evelyn's voice filled the room without a mic. She didn't raise it. She spoke as if everyone were seated inches from her. My name is Dr. Evelyn Reed. No reaction. I'm the ethics oversight partner at Blackwood Capital, the firm currently in final negotiations to acquire a 51% stake in Ascendia Air. The Omega Protocol was the final test. Unannounced, unscripted, with no second chances. A glass lightly tapped the floor. No one reached for it. Every mind was stuck between two words, no second chances. Evelyn pulled out her tablet, connected it. The large screen displayed video clips, voice recordings, and internal survey questions. Victoria, tickets can be bought, but class cannot. Mark, do you think that dress meets the standard? Security footage. Evelyn being escorted out as indifferent eyes looked on. No one objected. No one explained. No one laughed, except the versions of themselves on the screen. Evelyn lifted her gaze, scanning the room, not to accuse, but to see who still had the courage to look back. Mr. Sterling, she said, turning to the screen, I don't need an apology. I need accountability. The problem isn't one bad employee. The problem is a culture where prejudice is served on a silver tray and called a standard. I demand 3 things. Immediate termination of Victoria Davenport and Mark. All access revoked. Effective now. Suspension of the entire AA-142 crew for 72 hours, pending an independent investigation into discriminatory conduct. And you, Jonathan Sterling, will issue a public apology. Here, now. No PR team. No media strategy. No legal counsel. No one moved. No one took a deep breath. Victoria muttered something, but it didn't form words. Mark looked up, lips twitching toward I didn't mean to, but Evelyn's eyes stopped at his throat like a noose. Sterling nodded. No denial. No negotiation. An IT staffer stepped forward, handing Evelyn an iPad. She reviewed termination forms, account deactivation confirmations, and internal notices. She signed without hesitation. Victoria collapsed into a chair. No one reached for her. Mark exited through the side door, never turning back. No applause. No, he had it coming. Just silence, heavy as a chain, looped around the necks of those who thought they were above morality. Sterling began to apologize. No script, no slogans, just a middle-aged man forced to speak the truth for the first time in his career. Evelyn didn't nod, didn't smile, because justice isn't a reward. Justice is the baseline. She reached in her bag and pulled out her old notebook, set on the table, open to a frayed page with her father's handwriting. Respect is not a reward for wealth. It's the foundation for being considered human. No one dared say a word, because every word now came too late. 1 week later, no hidden security cameras, no guards flanking the entrance, no glances that assessed worth by brand or skin tone. The Zenith Club today was different. The marble floors were still there, so were the poltrona, Frau leather chairs. But instead of silent champagne flutes, people arrived carrying recorders, notebooks, and questions no longer rooted in markets, but in humanity. Evelyn entered. No suit, no cashmere dress, just a white shirt, gray trousers, and unpolished leather shoes. Hair tied back, no jewelry, no external symbols of power, because now she didn't need to carry power, it arrived with her. Jonathan Sterling had been there since early. He wasn't seated in the center. No one dared. He stood one step back, notebook in hand, silent like a man attending the graduation of his own company. Evelyn stood at the center of the room, and for the first time, she didn't speak to confront. She spoke to build. Blackwood Capital will not acquire Ascendia Air. A murmur rose, then stopped. We will invest $10 billion. With one condition, complete structural reform. Not a threat, not a bailout. A new manifesto for the future of an industry rotting from within. She continued, we are establishing the Reed Initiative for Dignity in Service. Not a training, not a motivational session. This is a transfusion. Every eye turned to her, not with judgment, but with a mix of curiosity and fear, the kind reserved for the first humans stepping onto the moon, holding not just a flag, but a mirror for those left behind. Evelyn raised her hand. A screen behind her lit up. 3 main points appeared. Blind hiring system. No names, no photos, no personal profiles. Only merit. Ethics Oversight Board. Independent from the executive team. Transparent reporting. Public data. The Joseph Reed Scholarship Fund. Full scholarships for students of color from underserved communities pursuing aviation careers, flight attendants, operations, pilots, engineers. My father worked baggage handling at this airport, Evelyn said, her voice catching slightly for the first time, but still steady. 30 years. Never flew once. Never complained. But he left me something this place had lost, dignity. She held up the old notebook. The edges were worn. One corner is stained with old coffee. In here is everything he taught me about the world. No lessons about success. Only how to stand tall when no one invites you to sit. A voice rose from the crowd, the young concierge from the other day. Will we be retrained? Evelyn looked at her, nodded. No, we'll be re-educated. From the start. Together. There was no applause. None needed. Sterling stepped forward, voice cracking slightly. After all this, do you still want to take that flight, Dr. Reed? Evelyn looked out the glass doors. An Ascendia airplane waited. First class seat. Cold champagne. Familiar le l'absent. She turned back, gaze steady like a load-bearing wall in a structure ready to be rebuilt. No, my work here is done. Evelyn walked away, notebook still in her left hand. The glass doors opened. Wind from the runway swept in, cold, real, like air after a storm has scrubbed everything clean. She disappeared into the crowd. No security detail. No cameras. No spotlight. Because legacy doesn't need to be lit. It glows on its own. Evelyn Reed didn't scream for attention. She didn't use rage to retaliate. She entered the system quietly, was dismissed, diminished, and walked out, having reset the foundation of an entire industry. The lesson wasn't that she won. The lesson was how she chose to win. Not with complaints, not with showy power, but with the only thing no one can fake: true value, true knowledge, true dignity. In a world that puts faith in appearances, titles, and brands, Evelyn's story reminds us that dignity cannot be measured by handbags, membership cards, or the approving glances of the majority. There is only one way it survives: through action when no one's watching, and when no one stands with you. If you've ever felt excluded simply for not looking the part, if you've ever been asked to prove your worth while others had it assumed, if you've ever walked into a room and felt sentenced for existing, this story is for you. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, to be heard, not just to inspire, but to shift perspectives, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Story Precious. We tell stories not to entertain, but to awaken. Thank you for walking this journey with Evelyn Reed. And welcome to a world where truth can finally be told in the voice of justice itself.